The winter sunlight spilled across the small town of Blue Haven like a blessing, but inside a quiet kindergarten classroom, a single sheet of paper carried the weight of an entire childhood's longing. It fluttered from a little hand, passed across a cluttered desk, and fell face up as though begging the world to notice. On it, in uneven handwriting, were words that could break even the hardest hearts. "Dear Santa, please send me a dad." It wasn't just a wish, it was a cry from a child who had stopped believing that someone could choose her, love her, or fight for her. And yet, fate had a strange way of picking up such broken pieces and placing them in the most unexpected hands. Before the day was over, that fragile letter would travel far beyond the classroom, away from the town's worn streets and into the glass-walled office of a billionaire whose life was drowning in silence. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and miracles that arrive when least expected, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Stories of Kindness. Your support keeps these stories alive. The story began that morning when 5-year-old Maribel Hart tucked her letter into the bright red mailbox outside her school. For others, Santa requests meant toys or chocolates, but for her, it meant longing for something she had never truly felt: belonging. Her mother, Serena Hart, had raised her alone since the day she was born. Serena was gentle but exhausted, working double shifts at a local convenience store just to keep the lights on. She never spoke much about Maribel's father, except to say he wasn't someone they could rely on. Maribel grew up watching her mother return home every evening, her feet aching, her eyes tired, yet her smile never fading. She admired her mother's strength but felt a quiet ache, knowing Serena carried the weight of 2 hearts on her own. Meanwhile, miles away in the towering city of Crestmont lived Rowan Vale, a billionaire tech entrepreneur whose name echoed in headlines yet, whose life felt painfully hollow. His wealth built empires, but it couldn't quiet the loneliness that had followed him since childhood. He had lost his own parents young, growing up in the custody of business guardians and institutions instead of love. He had everything, yet nothing truly mattered. Most evenings he'd stand in his penthouse staring at the city below, watching families walk together, feeling both close to them and impossibly distant. Everything changed when Maribel's letter mistakenly arrived at Rowan's corporate mailroom. It happened because the company had sponsored a holiday program that handled letters addressed to Santa. Most were filled with wishes for toys and games, but this one struck the sorting clerk so deeply that she carried it directly to Rowan's assistant. And somehow, through a chain of reactions fueled by curiosity and quiet compassion, the letter made its final landing on Rowan's desk. That sunny afternoon, Rowan sat in his office, reviewing financial reports, when he noticed the small envelope with childlike handwriting. Something about its innocence pulled his attention. When he unfolded the letter and read the words, a strange heaviness grew in his chest. He reread it slowly, feeling an unexpected sting behind his eyes. A request so simple, so pure, yet carrying a heartbreak far heavier than a child should ever bear. For the first time in years, Rowan felt something other than apathy. He felt pulled. He searched every detail available from the sponsorship program and eventually found Maribel's school information. He didn't fully understand why he cared so much, but something inside him insisted he couldn't ignore this child's wish. He had spent years running from connections, hiding behind boardrooms and tinted glass, convincing himself emotions made him weak. But that letter reminded him of a boy who once wished for love too. The next day, Rowan arrived in Blue Haven. It was supposed to be a quiet town visit, but the moment he stepped out of his sleek black car into the warm afternoon sun and saw the small school with faded blue paint, he felt something soften inside him. He watched the children play, running freely, laughing with innocence he barely remembered. And then he saw her, Maribel, sitting alone on a small bench, her hands wrapped around a lunchbox she barely touched. Her eyes held that familiar searching look, as if waiting for someone who never came. Rowan didn't approach her that day. Instead, he met with the school to discuss expanding their holiday program, using it as an excuse to gather more information about Maribel and her background. He learned about Serena, the struggles she faced, and the simple truth that this small family was trying their best in a world that wasn't always kind to them. With each detail, his resolve deepened. He wanted to help them, not out of pity, but because the letter had awakened a part of him he thought was long dead. He didn't yet understand his place in their world, but he felt called to it, as though this was the moment his life had been leading toward. Serena first met Rowan in the bright afternoon light outside the store where she worked. She was startled to see such a polished, well-dressed man waiting respectfully near the entrance. Rowan introduced himself as someone wanting to support local families through a company initiative. Serena, though wary, sensed genuine kindness behind his calm demeanor. The two talked under the soft rays of sunlight, and for the first time in years, Serena felt seen, not as a struggling single mother, but as a woman who had carried burdens with grace. Over the next weeks, Rowan returned again and again, each time offering small acts of kindness, donating books to the school, providing supplies, repairing the playground's broken swings. Serena didn't know that every gesture he made was quietly guided by Maribel's letter. Slowly, Rowan found himself drawn not just to the child who wrote it, but to the resilient mother who raised her. Serena had a warmth he had never known, a gentleness that made him feel grounded. And Maribel, with her shy smile and hopeful eyes, tugged at something deep inside him, something he didn't know he could feel. He still hadn't told them about the letter. He feared they might misunderstand or feel pity or think he was intruding, so he chose patience, understanding that trust was not something to be rushed. One bright afternoon, as the sun illuminated the playground in a golden hue, Rowan finally approached Maribel. She had been drawing alone, her sketchbook filled with pictures of families, always showing a mother and child, and a blank space beside them. Rowan sat a gentle distance away, complimenting her drawings. She looked up at him, studying his face with curiosity. Something about him seemed safe to her, almost familiar, as if she had been waiting for him without knowing it. Their conversations became more frequent. Rowan found himself laughing again, something he hadn't done in years. Maribel shared stories about her favorite colors, her dreams, and how she imagined a dad would take her to the park, lift her up, and tell her she mattered. Each word pierced Rowan's heart, reminding him of everything he had missed as a child and everything he quietly wished he could give now. Serena noticed how Maribel lit up whenever Rowan visited, but she also worried. Life had taught her not to trust joy too quickly, especially when it came wrapped in something too good to be true. One afternoon she gathered the courage to ask Rowan why he was doing so much for them. The sunlight filtered through the store windows, casting soft shadows as she spoke with quiet vulnerability. Rowan hesitated, knowing the truth needed to be spoken. With sincerity, he revealed the letter. He explained how it reached him, how deeply it moved him, and how he couldn't walk away after reading her child's longing. Serena's eyes filled with emotion. It wasn't embarrassment she felt. It was gratitude mixed with disbelief that someone with so much power and wealth could be moved so profoundly by the words of a little girl who barely had anything. The weight of her exhaustion, fears, and hopes seemed to lift just slightly that day. From that moment on, something tender began to grow among the three of them. Rowan became a steady presence in their lives. He accompanied Serena and Maribel to farmers' markets under the warm daylight, helped Maribel with school projects, and shared stories from his own lonely childhood. Serena, who had built walls around her heart for years, found herself slowly letting them down. Rowan's stillness, his patience, and his genuine care created a space where she finally felt safe. But life rarely moves forward without tests. One afternoon, news outlets discovered Rowan's frequent visits to Blue Haven. Rumors spread like wildfire, claims that he was exploiting the town for publicity. Serena saw the headlines and felt fear tighten her chest. She confronted Rowan privately, worried that their little world was about to crumble. Rowan, however, reassured her with honesty that his intentions had nothing to do with business. His actions came from a place he had never understood until now, a longing for connection, for family, for belonging. The town's judgment eventually faded as they witnessed Rowan's genuine involvement. He attended local community meetings, supported small businesses, and helped rebuild parts of the town that needed care. But most importantly, he showed up for Maribel's school events, for Serena's long days, and for every moment that mattered. Months passed, filled with bright days, growing trust, and a quiet joy that felt like healing. Rowan, once terrified of emotional vulnerability, now found comfort in the sound of Maribel's laughter, the warmth of Serena's smile, and the simple peace of a shared meal in their small dining room. On a warm December afternoon, Maribel approached Rowan, holding her old sketchbook. She had replaced the drawing of a mother and child with a new one. This time, the blank space beside them wasn't empty anymore. A tall figure stood beside Serena, holding Maribel's hand. She looked up at Rowan with eyes filled with hope and whispered the words she'd written long ago, except now they weren't a wish. They were a truth slowly unfolding. Rowan felt tears gather, the kind he never let fall before. Serena placed her hand gently on his arm, and for the first time in his life, Rowan realized he wasn't standing alone. He had found something he never expected: family. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to Stories of Kindness. Your support means more than you know. Special request, please comment. Kindness matters if you believe every child deserves love. And as the sun glowed brightly across Blue Haven that day, Rowan silently thanked the universe for a single letter that changed everything. A letter that didn't ask for gifts or miracles, just a dad. And in answering that wish, he found something far greater than he ever imagined.